Hey everyone, Mario again, coming at you with another episode of First Impressions, the video series where I dissect, or if Jeff would probably prefer, I discuss certain films, either films that are still out in theaters, and this is my brief review of them during their theatrical run, or films that I've been meaning to watch for a while now. Now, today's film is an Academy Award winning film from 1987. It's a romantic comedy, which I think makes the fact that it won some Oscars even of more importance, because comedies, along with horror, seem to get the shaft when it comes to the Academy Awards. Well, this film was nominated for 6, and it won 3. Best Original Screenplay, Best Actress for Cher, and Best Supporting Actress. The film, of course, is Moonstruck. Now, before I get too far into this, if you hear like clicking or whistling in the background, that would be my bird, Little Lapis. She's on my left hand at the moment, and my hand is on my lap, and that's a little bit away from where the microphone is sitting, so if you pick up like clicking like that, that's just her. She's a content little birdie, aren't you, Little Lapis? Yeah, I think you heard her once, but anyway, in addition to Cher, the film stars Nicolas Cage, Vincent Scardina, Olympia Dukakis, Danny Aiello, if I pronounced that last name correctly, Julia Bovasso, Louis Gus, John Mahoney, and Anita Guillette. I think that's Guillette. It could just be Giletti. I'm just gonna assume, since it's double L's, it could be Y. I'm just assuming that based on Spanish, but I don't know if Italian does the same thing. But sue me if it doesn't. The plot of the film is that we have Cher's character, 37-year-old Loretta Castorini, who's a Sicilian-American widow and an accountant in Brooklyn Heights, New York. She lives with her family, her father, Cosmo, Gardenia's character, who is a successful plumber, her mother, Rose, Olympia, and her father's father, who is played by Fyodor Shalipin Jr. Currently, she's dating a man named Johnny Cammareri, that's Aiello's character. And at the date we see them have at the beginning of the film, he proposes to her because he's going to go to Sicily to see his dying mother, and he feels like doing it. She agrees, but says they have to do it traditionally because her first wedding wasn't so traditional. In fact, it was done inside a courthouse, kind of like how my own grandmother's first marriage was done, so kind of a little funny thing there for me. She thinks that's the reason he died. Anyway, he says yes, and they're going to get married when he comes back after a month, and she's going to plan everything. Now, her father dislikes Johnny, and he doesn't want to pay for it because, you know, old school traditional weddings, it's usually paid for by the bride's father, and Cosmo is a cheapskate, even though he will spend out some money when he's doing his job, and he'll make big money in return. He just doesn't like to spend money. By the end of the film, he agrees to pay for a wedding. So that's part of his character arc. Rose, her mother, she wants to know if Loretta is in love with Johnny. She's not. She likes him, but she's like, yeah, you could be driven crazy by a partner that you love. Now, while he's gone, Johnny wants Loretta to contact his estranged brother, Ronnie, who is Nicolas Cage, because he wants him to be at the wedding. They've been estranged for 5 years and, you know, doesn't want there to be bad blood between them. Well, she does, and Ronnie has no interest in doing there, because apparently he has a prosthetic hand and he blames it on Johnny. I'm not going to go into the details of it, but it is funny. And listening to it, it's like, really? You're blaming him on that? But you get it. Now, Loretta tries to help him a little bit, talking and cooks a meal for him. And it ends with them making love in his room. And of course, you can imagine the next morning is very, very awkward. Loretta's like, oh crap, what did I do? What did I do? We should not speak of this. Where Johnny is like head over heels in love with her. And they end up going to the opera that night. And you can imagine that their relationship continues forward. And in the end, they both say they're in love with the other one. And you can imagine that's where the wedding ends up. We don't see it, but there's enough left at the end. You're like, yeah, they're going to have a decent marriage, at least. Now, to kind of counterbalance this little weird little affair, because that's kind of what it is. I mean, brother of her fiance and her, but Loretta's father is cheating on her mother with this one woman, and Rose suspects it, and at the end she does confront Cosmo about it and says she wants him to stop seeing her, which he agrees to do. And she does talk with this one guy who apparently is a professor that romances many young women until they throw water in his face. He seems to be trying to seduce her by the walk, and there's a little funny moment there involving her father-in-law, which I'm not going to spoil, but I was laughing a lot. As you can imagine, I was laughing a lot during this film, which... Owie! Owie! Now the is getting a little nippy. Sorry about that. What you can imagine shows that this film did work. And one thing I can say is that the film, from the beginning, had me hooked, because it starts with the song That's Amore by Dean Martin. Apparently, it originally had the one song from the opera they see, but apparently they changed it because of negative test audiences. Which I say that's one instance where a test audience helps, because if it was opera, it'd be like, okay, that doesn't set the film up pretty well. Now, one thing I will say is that Nicolas Cage, based on his performance, I could definitely see why he did not get an Oscar consideration for this, because you can see his talent there, and he is a little over the top with some of his parts. But you could see his talent there, and you could see that why about 10 years later he was an Oscar winner. Now with Cher and Olympia, you could definitely see why they won Oscars for this film. Apparently Cher, though, thought when she was making the film that she was given a bad performance. She even told Olympia in between takes that this film was going to be a dud, and it wasn't. It was made for $15 million, made almost $100 million, about 91 and a half, a little over that. So you can definitely see that it made money. So she was wrong in that regard. Makes me wonder what she was thinking. Now, before I get too far away from Nicolas Cage, Cher's responsible for him being in the film, because apparently his original screen test did not go too well with the execs. So they're looking at it and go, this is the guy you guys want as the romantic lead? I don't think so. And apparently Cher went to bat for him, and I have to say the results are pretty good, because it's kind of hard to imagine any other actors in the role, but I'm sure there could have been other people, like trying to think of someone around the same age at that time. Maybe they could have gotten a younger Tom Hanks. That would have been interesting, but might have been a little bit of a different characterization, because part of the character of Ronnie comes from Nicolas Cage's acting interpretations, and it's one of those things, it's kind of hard to imagine anyone else playing this guy. But I'm sure someone else could have done it. It just wouldn't have been as memorable, because Nicolas Cage, he's one of those guys that even if the movie's bad, you remember him. And when the movie's good, depending on how he did his acting, you remember him, and this is one of those ones. The acting, for the most part, is good, but Cher and Olympia definitely give the best performances, and like I said, they deserve their Oscars. Best Original Screenplay, I could definitely see why it won that. Now, the other two that it got nominated for, other three, excuse me, were Best Picture. I could see why. Best Supporting Actor for Vincent, and Best Director. Now, I'm going to check to see real quick who it lost to each year. For Best Picture, it lost to The Last Emperor. And another nominee that year was Fatal Attraction, a film which I still need to watch. Now let's see, Best Director. Let's see who he lost to. I'm going to take a moment. He lost to Bernardo, probably going to butcher this last name, Bertolucci, who is also the guy who directed The Last Emperor. Fatal Attraction was also nominated that year too, so they both lost. And then Supporting Actor, let's just see who they lost to. Oh, I could definitely say this is a good one to lose to. Gardenia lost to Sean Connery for The Untouchables. You'll never bring a knife to a gunfight. They sent one of ours to the hospital, we sent one of theirs to the morgue. Still have to watch all that movie, but I can definitely see from what little I've seen why he lost. Also nominated that year was Denzel Washington for Cry Freedom, and Albert Brooks for Broadcast News. And he also got Morgan Freeman for Street Smart, which I think was one of his earlier roles around the time he got discovered. like I said, on the whole, it's a pretty entertaining romantic comedy. If you're not the biggest fan of the genre, set your disdain aside and give it a watch. If for anything, for Sharon Nicolas Cage. Because the chemistry they have is to die for.